Okay, so you're here with us because you want to understand what matters, right? Like you want to get right to the heart of it, but still you want to make sure you're getting all the details.
Yeah, you want that deep dive,
Exactly.
but without all the fluff.
Exactly. So today we are diving deep into a potential new travel ban that seems like it could be coming down from the Trump administration.
Yeah, this is huge.
It's big.
So we're looking at a report from Al Jazeera that draws on a New York Times article. And they're citing anonymous officials about this.
Really?
So we got to be careful with that.
Of course.
But we want to look at this and see, okay, what are the details here? What is this actually going to mean, practically? How big a deal is this?
And it seems like a really big deal, right? Because this Al Jazeera report is suggesting this ban could be affecting citizens from up to 43 countries.
43 countries.
That's a big number.
That's a lot of people.
Yeah.
And it's not like it's just one, kind of one-size-fits-all thing.
Right.
It seems like there are 3 different categories of restrictions we're looking at.
Okay, so let's break it down.
Yeah.
Let's start with that first category,
Okay.
the top tier,
Okay.
the countries that are facing a full visa suspension.
Right.
And the report names a few right off the bat: Afghanistan, Iran, Syria, Cuba, North Korea.
Yeah, and they say at least 10 countries.
At least 10,
So who knows?
right? So maybe even more than that.
Right.
So when we hear that term, full visa suspension, what does that mean? Like, really, for people living in those countries, what does that mean for them?
Well, so, a full visa suspension based on, what we understand of these things probably means no new visas are going to be issued for citizens of those countries, right? It's a full stop.
Like, nobody can travel to the U.S.
Right. So if you're thinking about, visiting for tourism or studying or working or immigrating,
Yeah.
it's going to be really, really tough, if not impossible.
So for folks who might have family in the U.S. or were, hoping to maybe even study in the U.S.
Right, or do business there.
This is a major roadblock.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so let's move on to that second category.
Okay.
This is partial visa suspensions.
Right.
And here, the report names 5 countries: Eritrea, Haiti, Laos, Myanmar, and South Sudan.
Right, so a lot fewer countries in this category.
Right. So how is this different from the first category? What does a partial suspension mean?
Okay, so here's where it gets more complicated.
Okay.
The report seems to say that these partial suspensions are going to be focused on certain kinds of visas.
Okay.
Tourist visas, student visas, and some immigrant visas.
Okay.
But it does say there might be some exceptions.
Okay, so there's a little wiggle room here.
Yeah, exactly. It's not like a total ban like we saw in that first category.
Right.
So some categories of people might still be able to travel.
It makes you wonder who gets to decide who gets those exceptions.
Exactly. And what criteria are they going to use?
Right.
So there are a lot of questions here.
Yeah. So a lot more nuance in that second category.
For sure.
Now, that third category, that's where I think things get really interesting.
Yeah.
Because it's not just a list of countries,
Right.
right? There's a condition attached to it.
Right. And it's a big group of countries, 26 countries.
26. It's the biggest group by far.
Right.
And the report mentions a few just as examples, right? They say Belarus, Pakistan, Turkmenistan.
Right. Just as examples.
But the thing is, these countries could face these partial suspensions, but only if their governments don't do certain things within a certain amount of time.
Yeah, they're basically saying you have 60 days
60 days.
to fix your problem.
To address the deficiencies.
Right.
That's what it says in the draft memo.
Which is what this is all based on.
Right, so it's almost like a probationary period or something.
Yeah, or like a warning shot. I don't know.
Right.
Like, if you don't improve your vetting process within 60 days, then we're going to put these restrictions on you.
And this seems to be about, those security concerns we were talking about before.
Exactly.
So it's like they're giving them a chance to fix things.
Maybe it's an incentive to cooperate on security measures.
Right, maybe it's not just about shutting people out.
Right. It's about, trying to get everyone on the same page in terms of security.
That's a good point.
Yeah. So this third category definitely has a different feel to it.
Yeah, it's not just a straightforward ban.
Right.
Now, this Al Jazeera report that we're basing all of this on,
Yeah.
this came out on Friday, March 15th, 2025.
2025.
So this is all very recent.
Very recent.
But it's not coming out of nowhere.
Not at all.
Like you were saying, there's a lot of context here.
Right. We've got to look at the bigger picture.
And a big part of that picture is this executive order that the Trump administration issued back on January 20th.
Right. The beginning of the year.
Yeah, and this order was basically saying we need to intensify security vetting for anyone who wants to come into the U.S.
Yeah, they said they wanted to strengthen national security by making sure they're identifying potential threats.
And so following that order,
Right.
cabinet members were told to put together a list of countries that have problems with their vetting and screening processes.
And that list was due by March 21st.
So that deadline is coming right up.
It's right around the corner.
Yeah. So it seems like this travel ban, this proposed ban that we're talking about, is kind of a direct result of that executive order and that whole process.
Absolutely. It's like they're saying, okay, we've looked at all these different countries.
Right.
We've identified the ones with these deficiencies.
And these are the consequences.
These are the potential consequences, yeah.
And it's interesting, too, because it seems like, you know, this isn't totally new territory for a Trump administration.
Right.
The report even makes a point of drawing a comparison to the travel ban from his first term.
That was a big deal.
It was?
A lot of controversy.
Yeah. Can you remind us what that was all about?
Yeah, so one of the early policies that Trump put in place during his first term was this travel ban
Right.
that initially targeted citizens from 7 different countries,
Devin.
most of them Muslim-majority countries.
Right.
So Iran, Iraq, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, Syria, and Yemen.
And there were a lot of lawsuits.
Oh, yeah. A lot of people were really upset about that ban.
A lot of protests, too.
Yeah.
It was very controversial.
Absolutely.
And if I remember correctly, that list didn't actually stay the same. Right?
Yeah, it actually changed over time.
Right.
They ended up taking Iraq and Sudan off the list.
And then it went all the way to the Supreme Court, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And a revised version of the ban was upheld by the Supreme Court in 2018.
And that version included North Korea and Venezuela, in addition to some of the original countries.
Right. So the list definitely evolved.
So it seems like with this history, we can't just assume that this proposed list is set in stone.
Right. Things could definitely change.
And it seems like, you know, Trump himself has been hinting that he might be looking to do something like this again.
Yeah, the report mentions a speech from October 2023
2020.
where he was talking about restricting travel from certain regions.
What regions did he mention?
So he specifically mentioned the Gaza Strip, Libya, Somalia, Syria, Yemen,
Okay.
and then he just said anywhere else that threatens our security.
So it seems like this potential ban really aligns with what he's been saying publicly.
Absolutely.
Now, even though this Al Jazeera report is giving us, you know, what seems like a pretty detailed look at this potential ban,
Yeah.
we should be clear, this isn't a done deal, right?
No, definitely not.
It's not a finalized policy.
The report makes it clear that this list of countries, these restrictions, it's all still in draft form.
So things could change.
Absolutely.
And this proposal still needs to get approval from different people within the administration.
Including Secretary of State Marco Rubio.
Marco Rubio.
Yeah.
And a U.S. official actually told Reuters,
Anonymously.
right, speaking anonymously to Reuters.
Always got to be careful with those anonymous sources.
Right, but they confirm that changes are possible.
Right, and that it's not a done deal.
So things are still in flux.
Very much so.
Okay, so let's summarize what we know.
Okay.
It looks like we're looking at a potential new travel ban from the Trump administration that could affect a lot of countries.
Possibly up to 43?
40.
With different levels of restrictions.
Right. So just to recap, we have those 3 categories.
Right.
The first one, a full visa suspension for at least 10 countries.
Including those 5 we talked about.
Afghanistan, Iran, Syria, Cuba, and North Korea.
Right.
And that would basically mean no new visas being issued for citizens of those countries.
It would be a complete stop to travel for a lot of people.
Then we have the partial visa suspensions for 5 countries.
Eritrea, Haiti, Laos, Myanmar, and South Sudan,
Right,
affecting specific types of visas like tourist visas and student visas.
with the possibility of some exceptions.
Exactly.
And then the third category,
Right.
the conditional category.
Yeah.
26 countries that could be facing partial suspensions if they don't address these security concerns within 60 days.
Right.
And some of the examples they gave were Belarus, Pakistan, Turkmenistan.
Right.
So this is all happening after this executive order about security vetting.
Right.
And it's kind of reminiscent of those travel bans from Trump's first term.
Yeah.
But it's really important to remember,
What?
this is all still a draft.
Right. It's not set in stone.
Nothing's finalized yet.
It's a developing situation.
So all of this, you know, it makes you think about what the implications of something like this could be.
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking about a lot of
For
countries.
people.
A lot of people.
And it's all tied to this idea of national security.
Right.
So it makes you wonder, what could the impact be on relations between the U.S. and these other countries?
Right. What about all the people who might be trying to come to the U.S. to visit family or to study or to work?
Right.
What's going to happen to them?
And how will this all play out on the world
Right. What
stage?
kind of message does this send to the rest of the world?
It's a big question.
Yeah. So much to think about.
Definitely a lot to unpack.
A lot to unpack. And we'll be keeping a close eye on this story as it develops.
Absolutely. We'll keep you updated.